It was more the fact that, you know, I do all kinds of complex adrenaline-filled sports, and I was walking down the hill to go and you know, get an Indian, you know, eat an Indian meal, and stepped over and did this enormous fracture to a tiny little bone that's left me crippled for the past 2 weeks and very impatient as well. So I was going to go on a bike ride with Julia's husband, and that's not going to happen for a while. And the doctor told me it's not going to be weeks; it's going to be months. It's the wrong thing to say to Diego, I reckon. You know, so I've got some trying to keep me to the ground at the moment with my foot rested. So yeah, that's the backdrop to it.
Go ahead, my friend. Over to you. We're on 12 o'clock.
We just 5 seconds ago we reached midday. So if you'd like to stay on for Diego's session, all you have to do is stay on here. If you need to grab a cup of coffee or take a little break, then please do. But we'll be kicking off almost immediately. Batya, thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me. And I just noticed in the chat that some people ask questions, so I'm happy to get in touch with them afterwards if they want me to answer them. I just read all the chat, the messages now. But thank you everyone for your comments and feedback, and really appreciate it. It was so nice being here. Thank you. Bye everyone.
Bye Batya.
You can find out more about Batya and how to get in touch with her in the festival hub. So you can go just right there. And in a few short moments, we will be kicking off. Bye, Glenford. Bye, cheerio. Thank you, everyone. We will be kicking off. I love this kind of turnaround here. There's a few people staying. It's wonderful. We've got loads of new people who've joined us in this meeting room. For those of you who've just joined us, welcome. Welcome to the Love Tutoring Festival. For many of you, this will be your first event today. We're seeing some familiar faces. So thank you guys for being here. Please, if you are able to, please turn on your video and your audio. We want to hear from you. You may hear a lot from myself and from Diego in the next hour, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from you as well. And of course, bye Julia. Very shortly, we'll be moving into Diego's session. There's just a couple of moments here where you can take a brief moment, and then we will be going straight into Diego's session. So, deep breath.
We're ready, Ludo. It's you that's already done 6 hours of work today, not everyone else. Can I welcome everyone in, please?
Please do.
Okay, super. Good morning again, Alma. Good morning, Elizabeth. Good morning, Jack. Good morning, Serena. Good morning, Georgina. Good morning, Jeremy. Good morning, Melanie. Good morning, Sarah. Good morning, Maria. Good morning, Ludo. Good morning, Verity. Good morning, Diego. Good morning, Claudia. Good morning, Rachel. Hi, Margaret. Margaret Mary or just Margaret?
Margaret Mary, both names.
Good morning, Margaret Mary. Good morning, Charlotte. Nice to see you again. Good morning, Kareem. Good morning, Francesca. Good morning, Jolyon. Very smart this morning. Good morning, Julie. Good morning, Cleo. Good morning, Chloe. Good morning, Emily. Oh, lovely. Good morning, Dror. Good morning, Agnesia. Good morning, Hannah. Good morning, Adele. Good morning, Maria. Good morning, Stuart. Good morning, Sadia. I am running out of space on my screen. Good morning, Cassandra. Diego, welcome. Over to you.
Oh, over to me. Oh, fantastic. Well, here we are. How weird is this, huh? Trying to get close, see if I can get close to you. It doesn't really work. Well, Julia, what a pleasure to see you again and to be here doing this amazing thing with you. And yeah, be part of all of this. It's cool. It's really nice. Really, really nice. Really, really nice. Yeah, and thanks everybody for joining in with this session. I can see Francesca Heaps. You've got a very nice kind of side angle there. You know, your headphones are cool. What are they? What are they? They look it's like the sort of headphones I probably need to avoid distraction. What are they, Francesca?
They're actually Genius Gaming ones, but they are really nice.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah, no, it's good to be here. It's good to be here. We've got about an hour to go, and I just got to tell you, I'm not going to be talking for an hour and stuff, but can I just, an absolute huge heart full of gratitude to Ludo and Julia and the QT team for organizing this. it isn't just romantic, dramatic language to emphasize the importance of this event, but this is a landmark event in the life of tutors, certainly in the UK at this particular point, but abroad and internationally, probably within reach of our fingertips already. So what you're being part of here is actually quite dramatically important to anyone who wants to come alongside young people and, you know, help them do better, be better. So it's great to be here. I could just talk about how great it is to be together with people for about an hour. And a lot of people kind of misjudge me. They think that I'm this massive extrovert. I am, but I also love the mountains and love being alone. And that's where all the thinking happened. That's where the growing takes place. And you don't really need to be in a mountain to be alone, by the way. You know, all it takes is a slight unusual turn in life to take you to your bedroom or to your living room, you know, for you to go inwardly and kind of check in with yourself. And I like both. So what I want to do, in addition to being grateful for being part of this, is to take you through a little bit of my thinking in relation to what we do at Nudge Education, why we do what we do. So, Julia, would you mind if I introduce myself very briefly?
Please do. I'm sorry, I have a rule. I don't introduce people. You're much better at it than we are. Go ahead.
No. So I was a school dropout, a private school dropout. My parents were running out of private schools they could choose to send me to, because I used to get asked to leave, which is a tough thing for them, you know, because they're earning. Then I migrated to this country, so I'm an immigrant. I am not from here, and I've been incredibly welcomed and given an enormous amount of opportunity to permeate this wonderfully rich social ecological system. We're going to talk about it a bit later, of Britain, and found some of my best friends and here, and avoided going back home. Not that home was a bad place, you know. If I told you what home was like, you'd think, what on earth are you doing in Newcastle? I am a fellow survival of mental health difficulties. So I, you know, at the age of 30 was diagnosed with chronic reactive anxiety and depression as a result of a massive traumatic event in my life, just to unveil that it was actually trauma that I hadn't really dealt with. And up to that point, I thought life was pretty straightforward and nice and easy. And I thought, I'm pretty sorted, you know, I'm nice and happy. There's nothing wrong there until that happened. So if there's anybody out there, you know, boy, girl, somewhere in between on that gender world, who suffers from any or struggles with anything like this, you know, I'm one of them. So if there's hope for me and what I'm kind of experiencing, this quality of life and how much life is worth living at this particular point, if there's hope for me, trust me, there's hope for you, because this is a very tamed down version of what I am. So about 5-6 years ago, I was invited into this work by probably pain, frustration, economical need, and I ventured into, you know, becoming a specialist teacher with a focus on children that suffered from anxiety and behavioral dysfunctions within kind of the school environment. And you went from 1 to 2 to 3 to what we now work with, which is about 150 bulk of students across the country. And these aren't just students, by the way, everyone, who are, you know, misbehaving in school. These are kids, wonderful human beings, as we're going to explore, you know, dust of our dust, cells of our cells, blood of our blood, you know, really, regardless of our systematic sets of beliefs of how we structure our existence, we all came from the same thing, and we're probably going to go back to the same spots as well. So we're all together. We are each other at this point. And we've got about 170, close to 180. I'm probably due to induct another 20 next week or this week. Education experts. These are a bunch of like-minded professionals from a variety of disciplines who are getting behind the vision, the world that Nudge Education wants to construct, and the mission, the job that we've got at hand at this particular point. So like I'm saying to you, I'm currently leading this organization. So with all that I've experienced, if there's hope for me coming together with this group of people and finding my spot, there is absolutely hope for you coming together with this group of people. So let's stay on that theme, you know, of community very soon. I am an avid lover of anything that makes me scared. It's probably why I'm doing this job, because most of the time I feel somewhat incompetent, you know, but we keep learning, don't we? We keep doing these things. I want to share some of those lessons with you in a bit. But also things like high speed cycling or climbing, you know, walls and mountains and jumping off cliffs into the sea and, you know, sea diving and all that kind of stuff, you know, so I love that kind of stuff. I really, really value relationships. And when I find people who can sing from that same hymn sheet, it's amazing, it's magical. I think me and Julia managed to do that quite well. It feels like we've known each other for decades, but we've only known each other for a few months. Well, on the other hand, I do have very long-term relationships with people that I work with, like with Brian, my incredible friend and colleague who founded Nudge Education with me. It isn't an exaggeration, but if it wasn't for Brian, he might be around here somewhere. I'm not sure if you're around, Brian. You might want to say hello. He's next door, definitely there. None of this would have happened. You know, it was the coming together of these two minds that managed to sort of engineer how we might be able to point everybody to the direction that the two of us were heading anyway. And by the way, that's simply what leadership is all about. It's pointing people towards a direction, saying, you come in, you know, and making sure you get some good followers in there. It's less about the quantity, but the quality at particular stages. So yeah, so that's me. Live in Newcastle, dying to get a dog. Can't do it because I travel a lot all over the country doing this work. And yeah, I think that is it. That is it for now. Thank you so much for listening. That's it, I'm done. No, I'm not. Oh, I have so much fun. The thing about my inductions, I must say, Jack will know this, is that, you know, you've got this captive audience. I mean, although you do have freedom to leave, and my inductions, they want a job, you know, so I get all the jokes in. It's very manipulative of me, isn't it, everybody? It's so rude, so rude. People tend to like it and they stay on, but please don't leave. Stay. Right, so think of that. Let's make a start. So we are going to be talking. Could I share my screen with you guys? Is that all right? Is that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so if I go to multiple but advanced options, can I do this, Ludo? Is that, am I allowed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Share screen at the
Okay.
bottom.
Okay, share my screen. I must close all of these Slack groups, this, that, and the other. Right, I've clicked on that, Ludo, on advanced sharing options. What do I do next?
Just at the bottom of the Zoom screen, if you just click share screen, the green share screen button at the bottom of your Zoom screen.
Okay, I will get there. I've done this before, guys. Anytime.
If you want me to share it, Diego, I can also share it.
Let's have a look. I think I might be able to do this. I think I pressed the wrong button. 1 second. Yeah, go on, Ludo. Right, you go for it. Brilliant. Yeah, so the theme of what we're going to be kind of going through is actually, I asked a question. I was asked to talk about it, but I asked a question at the end. Sorry, Julia, took the liberty to do this. Is this tutoring for a life worth living? Because let's be honest about certain things here, guys. We're not really sending anybody to the moon, are we? We're not operating on anyone's brains. We're not actually delivering a heart operation. Why on earth, next slide, please. Why on earth would we bother? Ludo, if you can skip to the next slide, or I can do that somehow. I don't know if I can do it. So why would we bother Why would you spend such precious amount of your day for 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds an hour? You know, probably not to see the end of that particular success, or probably to be at times taken for granted, or being used as a potential piece in a jigsaw of a much larger organization who wants to use your particular potential and capital, you know, for their own particular economic gains. And how mediocre of us to be trying to live a life, you know, trying to potentially earn a living in dribs and drabs like this. Why would we bother? What's the point? Why would they? The other one is, why would they choose you if they've got YouTube and really cool, well-produced science videos out there and absolute fantastic content being delivered for free? Why? And I want to ask you this question. So I'm opening up. I wondered if you could tell me, why should we bother tutoring for a life worth living? Open to you. It's a genuine invitation. You will mute your mics and say to me, nice and out loud, because whatever. Why should we bother?
Because we can do it in a better way.
Yeah.
We can do it in
Because we
way
can do it in
that
a better
online
way.
can't.
Great. Anyone else?
I think people need positive feedback. Like, that's really important. Otherwise, you're just kind of like, you're interacting with a void, and it doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't make you feel.
You're interacting with the void. Yeah, interacting with the void. I really like that. Yeah, yeah. The field of neuroscience, by the way, to both of you, Serena and Verity, it can avoid the void through interaction with technology, and we're just about to feel the weight of that.
And making it practical as well. You know, for kinetic learners, I always try and make it practical, try and have games, activities, and I do small groups, so they're teaching each other.
Right.
And that's I don't think that's particularly, I think that's a really nice way for them to learn, and trying to get them to love learning, really.
It is, yeah, it is. Lots of technology out there as well.
Relationship.
Yeah.
Sorry, did somebody mention the R word?
It's a two-way relationship, isn't it? I get a lot from my students.
Interesting, yeah.
As well.
What do you get, Rachel?
Well, they teach me quite a lot, you know, just about what they're interested in. That keeps me young. I like that. But also, you know, it's looking at things in a current way, in a different way.
Yeah.
And it keeps me on my toes. It's about thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
There's kind of a loose, if you like, skeleton of what we're meant to achieve, but how we actually achieve that. Being a tutor, you have the freedom to do that yourself, don't you? And you make it up as you go along within the realms of what you know and what they're interested in. Right. And so I actually get a lot out of finding out what makes them tick. And that is what I'm interested in. And hopefully I can give that back to them by imparting my knowledge to help them get where they want to be, or give them what they need.
Oh, how wonderful.
Just as an extension, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Claudia. Hi, Claudia.
Yeah,
yes.
hi.
Hi,
Just
hello.
as an extension of what Rachel was saying about making them tick, I find when I'm tutoring, it's not just about the academics. The academics is like a tiny part of it. It's about the person, and you engage with their whole being and what's going on in their life, and break down any psychological barriers sometimes, or situational barriers that are stopping them from learning. Whereas obviously if they just learn online, it's just about the subject content, and tutoring is like that. I mean, you're part psychologist in a way.
Yeah, but again, Claudia and Rachel, why does that matter? Why is that important? Why does it matter that we?
is transformational for a person.
And why is transformational important? Why does it matter at all that
Because
we
otherwise they're stuck. They're not going anywhere.
Are they really?
Yeah, I've seen people like, I think so much of it is based on self-belief. And if you can change that, you change their entire potential.
So why is it important that we unstuck people?
Well, because otherwise no one's going anywhere. or people believe the wrong thing about themselves, or there's a block.
Right. Okay. Practically speaking, does that really happen though?
Yeah.
Do people actually stop going anywhere?
They can do in a subject.
Right, on a subject. Okay. So a subject.
But then that has a knock-on effect onto other subjects, and then that has a knock-on effect into their life confidence and their growth, their development as a person.
I think ultimately we only know what we know, don't we?
Yeah.
So we're constantly learning, no matter who we are. We may be the teacher, the tutor, but actually we don't know everything. And like you say, we're not sending them off to be a rocket scientist, a brain surgeon. We're helping them for that one small, few percent of their life.
Yeah, no, totally. Rachel, I think you might actually be helping them become surgeons and stuff. I'm talking about the tutoring in itself under the classification of the importance of whatever it is by default, not necessarily something that I believe. I hasten to add here, I will tell you that I'm not anti-tutoring before you think that that's the case at the start of my lesson. I'm trying to tease some things out of you here, about the importance of this. I am for you. You would have been an absolute strategic mistake of Julia to invite me here to say, get rid of this tutoring malarkey. It doesn't work for anyone. And Ludo would probably shoot me down immediately.
Careful.
But I'm trying to get to the point, why is relatedness important? Why transformation is important? Where does it come from? Why do we bother? Why do we intrinsically want to come alongside some people, be it the ones that we work with at Nudge Education, incredibly complex situations, or be those who are just trying to unstuck themselves in a subject? Why does it matter? Come on, some more people. Thanks, Rachel and Claudia and Serena so far and Verity. Anyone else? Why does it matter to you?
It's inbuilt within us, the need to connect in relationship. And actually, in order to connect in relationship, that is so important. And that's what makes students persevere and students do really, really well, because of that relationship that you have got with your student. So it's the inbuiltness, however that inbuiltness came into being, that inbuiltness to want to connect and to want to have relationship. And ultimately, our students are more than just statistics, aren't they? They're more than just numbers. We want to see that transformation, and it's believing in them and letting them see how much we believe in them too.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Sarah, and I'm going to tease this out a bit more. And I love this, by the way, they just said, you're not the first one to say that, Sarah, or me. These conversations have been going on for absolute centuries, and yet all that we've observed is that we've got an increasing number of children, particularly the ones we work with at Nudge Education, who are being left behind. So why nothing is happening? So why there's so little to evidence that we're moving forwards towards anywhere? And why, if that is such a strong belief, why isn't it working?
I think ultimately kids aren't getting enough. They're not getting enough people saying to them, I believe in you. They're not getting enough people willing to invest in them to see them change. Teachers are incredible. I've been a teacher for many, many years, but actually, in terms of having 30 kids in your class, it's really, really difficult to give a kid everything that they need. Yeah. And so I think if a kid has everything that they need, they're more likely to succeed and they're more likely to reach their potential. But is stuff in place for every child in the country? Probably not.
Yeah, and that's why we exist in education. I'll tell you a bit more about that later. But yeah, I've got some smiles. People almost wanted to say something, like anyone else wants to jump in and say, why does it matter that we tutor for a life worth living? Why does it matter that we get up and come alongside an individual child.
Can I speak? Yeah. I don't quite know where you're going with this, but it makes me think along kind of quite philosophical lines. I'm thinking of Camus and the myth of Sisyphus, and why roll a rock up the hill if it's going to roll back down and you're going to have to do it again. Yeah. It's almost like, why value anything? And I think intrinsically, I am an absurdist. I don't actually believe that there's a point in anything particularly unless we give it a point, unless we assign it some value. And I think for me, there's a feeling that as you go through life, you think back to your school days and all the things you missed and all the things you wish you had known or had learned better, because the value of that knowledge of the world around you becomes more and more important, I think, as you get older. Yeah. Until, of course, it all disappears the day you die. That's all very sad. But so ultimately, I think it's about giving value to education, and therefore, when you have those eureka moments with a student and you feel that they've taken something away that they kind of has really hit them that day, then and has kind of struck them in some way, then I think that's a valuable moment. I don't know where it goes in the grand scheme of things, but it feels good at the time.
Cool. I mean, brilliant. Thanks, James, and thanks everybody who contributed. Thank you for bearing with me. I can feel the energy going like, what is this guy on about here? Jeez. Ludo's like, Diego, come on, that's enough teasing. People are going to start leaving. And they do, Ludo, sometimes, you just got to let them do it. But like, so James, thank you. I'm going to pick up from where you left. Where do we go from the grand scheme of things? And I'd actually like to to offer you, I've teased enough, a perspective that starts with that big boom, whether we believe it or not, whether we think it or not. So A theory suggests this. Ludo, can we go back to the slides, please? A theory suggests there was this big boom of a sextillion megatons of catalytic energy. I mean, go and figure out. Oh, sorry, my Siri's trying to interrupt me here. My Siri, did you see how I owned that bit of technology there as well? My Siri. It's all of our Siris, isn't it? It's like, it's the god of computers almost. But anyway, so boom, off we go. That 6 trillion megaton of catalytic energy with a pinprick like this, boom, and off we go. Next slide. And then in like almost, let me just get this exactly for you. Apparently, almost, was it 3 hours into that explosion or something along those lines, because somebody would have been counting there, right? Somebody would have actually developed time by that point, and it would have counted, some kind of particles begin to sort of form and kind of, I just imagine like lots and lots of things dancing around this dark place of the universe, that the universe was. Then approximately 300,000 years later, because somehow somebody counted that as well and lived to count it and had a really good system to make sure that that was kept up to date over 300,000 times. Then we get, what do we get, Ludo? If you skip to the next one again, please. Atoms. And do we have science teachers here? Do we? Do we have some science teachers? You know what's coming next? Pardon? Got Margaret, chemistry, yeah? Yeah, okay, yeah, the sciences. Yeah, so you're gonna have to hold me to account to this, okay? And then I'll send you my references, that I've got to from. But the interesting thing is that apparently these particles suddenly decided to get together and form something new, something different, atoms. Then what do the atoms do, Margaret? They get together and what?
Or molecules, compounds.
There you go, there you go, there you go. But my science teacher back in the day would have been so proud of me. But if only he could connect the dots like I'm about to somehow. Then molecules get together like so many years and years that we can't potentially even count. And what do they form? Can anybody tell me? $19 billion years later, they formed cells. And then only 13 billion years later, we have some of those kind of first signs of life, cell formation and all that kind of stuff. But what I find interesting is that the universe somehow tells a story of progression. story of progression that happens from a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of like-minded people getting together to form something new. And then we've got theories of consciousness and all sorts of things developing at this point. But what I wanted to offer you, why do we bother? It's because actually in that thread that is really hard to conceive in our heads. It's a bit like thinking about the scandal of the people, you know, the track and trace, 22 billion pounds being spent on tracking people that never tracked anybody. I can't get that 22 billion in my head. I'm not being political. It's that number, 22 billion pounds wasted. I just can't quite get it in my head. It's the same with like the life of the universe. I can't quite get it. But somehow we've got that thread where we are all originated from the very same spot. And I think innately, and metaphysics and quantum physics are now trying to explain all sorts of things that we called them spirituality back then, you know, in their own particular language. That's probably my argument, why we care so much, because we are those children that we're working with, and they are us. So in essence, a very dry sense of progression. We are actually preserving some of our species. We're actually caring for those who are actually ourselves. There's that interconnectedness. Somebody said, I think it was either Rachel or someone else said, you know, we learn something, we get something when we do this. There's an exchange. And that for nudge education, the way we see it is that their pain, their suffering, their exclusion, their seclusion, their inability to imagine a life that is worth living is ours. Now, this would take me probably about a couple of hours to explain to you in detail how I got to this particular point. But I believe strongly that I could have never founded nudge education. It really isn't mine. I guess potentially in the grand scheme of how we organize ourselves in society, it is. So if it goes wrong, there's one person that goes and is accountable for that kind of thing. That would be me, then Brian, and everybody else. But when it comes down to that fire that people at nudge education have, I can never, ever found that. I can never be the initiator of that. I can point people somewhere and they go, oh, that makes complete sense. But actually, the reason why what you do is incredibly precious is because you are valuing our very humanity through a very simple thing called education, which then gives people lots of other things like purpose and meaning and connections and, you know, usability. We become useful and so on. But it's that kind of call for the human to be brought back into, it isn't just your worksheet, everybody. It isn't just all your kinesthetic work. It's far beyond, far greater than the tools that we use. It is a trajectory from the start through to where we are now in relation to where we are heading into the future. That's why it matters. In many cases, far more than sending people to the moon. Does that make sense? My argument here is for you, and sit with it, is that our humanity, we are entangled in our own humanity in a way that is actually really useful, which is why it matters that we get together as a group of singular like-minded people, a bit like the particles, and we get together to form something that is even better. And it's about time that it happens as well. So next slide, please. So yeah, so I want to talk to you about a couple of values of nudge education. So one, which is what we call togetherness. You know, I know a lot of stories that kind of depict the importance of being together, the importance of doing everything together, but really nudge education depicts that in its entirety. The oneness, everybody working for that same objective, that same endpoint, and then allyship. We are not at nudge education anti anything. We are for a life worth living for everybody. I tell you why. Because a teacher in that classroom that excludes that boy does not sit with that lightly. He or she too hurt. That local authority, there's a caseload of children in care and struggling to meet their needs and struggling with all of the potential, I don't know, law cases, lawsuits that are coming at them, and the SEND officers who are trying really hard to find what's best appropriate for their child. They too hurt, and they too need healing. They too need that being joined in together. So that's also, Elizabeth, I'm really enjoying seeing you play with your things there. No, it's great. I mean, it's not great for an ADHD child like me, but I wish I could do the same. But again, going back to it, so these are some of the things that I want to sort of highlight to you. So if we go back, if we go over to the next slide, please, Ludo. And I'm actually gonna, yeah. So like I said to you, let me go back to my own slides. Can you still see me, everyone? Just going to disappear here for a bit.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So, and actually it is then that much like the start of our potential universe, whatever and however we call that power that kind of created that energy, that power that created that momentum, that kind of, I guess, catapulted life into where we are now. It's about understanding that the collective us is something that becomes much greater than individual you, which is why I loved from day one the vision for qualified tutors, the vision for an organic community that empowers people to get alongside others for the sake of those who are perhaps not completely left behind, or maybe a little bit behind in comparison to others. A vision for equity. Yes, equality is very, very important, but equity is fantastic, which is why I love tutoring as well, because it gives those who actually need a bit more the chance to have a little bit more or lots more in relation to what they need. So at Nudge Education, then, we are this like-minded movement, this movement of like-minded people. And we are currently working for a particular group of people, a particular group of students. They are the chronically disengaged. The word chronic, when I came to define it, when I came to define chronic disengagement as such, I became to observe that actually the guys that we're working with are being referred, they're being referred to us. They were not just the usual, I guess, Diego type when I was in school, always very engaged, always going to school, but they just found it really difficult to engage with me when I was there, which is why I didn't hesitate going to a different school. I was actually really bored when I wasn't in school because there was nothing to do. There's no people to interact with. The people that we've begun to work with, they were long-term. They'd fractured away from the education sector. They become kids whose their names are at the bottom of the pile. Like an example I'm going to use for you very, very soon, called from Jack. They were the guys who were suffering from a multitude of undiagnosed or unspoken of mental health difficulties. These were like 6, 7, 9, 8, 10-year-olds who were experiencing suicidal thoughts at a point in their lives when they should have been dreaming about what they wanted to become, a life that they wanted to pursue. But instead, they were a bit like an invisible, broken down car in the motorway, just observing everybody zooming past towards their directions, going towards their destinations, everybody really happy, and they're there waving to everybody, please help me, but nobody can see them. They are the chronically disengaged. So I then set myself up to make sure that as long as I existed, much like when I felt like life wasn't worth living, and friends of mine picked me up a bit like the AA and took me to a place where I could be fixed, that I would be obsessed with the next one, by the way, Ludo, leaving no child behind. So that is the world that Nudge Education is trying to construct. And we've done that through togetherness, through oneness, and through this allyship type of mentality that I think it's so useful for those of us who are tutoring within the chronically disengaged realm or outside of that, a place where we understand that we are in this together for a particular purpose. That has got to be beyond economic status. It has got to be for more than like, what do you call it? Social, oh, I forgot the word, when people move around the social classes. You know what I mean by that. It has got to be about something else. For us at Nudge Education, the greater idea that comes from that togetherness from that understanding that the reason why we care so much, even though we can't quite put words into it, it's because we are them and they are us, comes to a point where we can say, can everyone in their own particular way imagine a life that is worth living, a life that they want to pursue? And there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of neurology content out there that says when that happens, it's people back in the day when religion used to rule the world, they used to call them conversion experiences, right? Is, you know, so there's some words called metanoia, there's all kinds of things that people know about the change of mind and heart. And it often began with the heart. And actually, by the way, the heart has far more electricity, even though it has less neurons, than your head. It conducts, it can measure far more energy here than here if you put something to measure it. So the heart is a very important thing. Maybe you need to bring the back as well. So Ludo, you need to go over to the other slide, by the way. I'm one slide ahead of you. Yeah. So this is nudge education. We kind of encompass all of those things that I'm telling you. And none of this that I'm telling you, I knew before I started it. But I'm really glad that we did. So let me fast track this to you. Ludo, can we go to the next one, please? So here's another one. I think, though, for those of us who are working with the chronically disengaged, the other thing that we find difficult to conceptualize is that when a child is fractured away from the education sector, it doesn't just hurt on the child, by the way. It hurts on the education sector too. As a former teacher, I've grown in compassion for those who are left to work within the education system, because none of them, I mean, well, maybe let's say 2% of them will, and they get cut out, and then they get, you know, we have lots of really good legislation out there that gets those guys who are in for the wrong reasons somehow penalized. But nobody has joined the education system to be watching children being left behind, do they? So, and to firm that up, Ludo, if we move on to the next one, who knows who this guy is, first of all? Who knows who this guy is? Can somebody look at it? And nobody remembers who this guy is? Anyone? Teachers, former teachers? Who is this guy on the screen? Will anyone have a go? It is a lovely face, isn't it? Probably somebody listened to forever. You can just potentially see the wisdom, and he has been an absolute fundamental piece in us understanding how children's development happens across a number of circles within society. So he developed what people call the social ecological system of child development. His name is Bronfenbrenner, and he actually began to talk about, can we move on to the next one, please? Next slide. Actually, there's two E's there. Forgive my spelling there. There should only be one E. And the main takeaways from Bronfenbrenner's social ecological systems theory is that he views a child development as this complex set of interactions in relationships between multiple levels of surroundings. So beginning with that inner family, then the interaction with the school, then interaction with the industries, and interaction with time, and a sense of being. The reason why I'm sharing this with you, that these circles actually influence the development of a child, potentially as a theory, I guess, but a lot of us and a lot of our education policies based on that, is because there is one thing that is consistent on that immediate, what we call microsystem of a child, and that is the school. And the school is such a powerful institution in relation to children's development. And he was a guy, you know, the things like Sure Start and, you know, all of those initiatives to get children starting well in life. It all comes out of this particular theory. But when you get a child, when you get a child that is being fractured away from that, I wanted to add, not only the child loses out or misses out on things like all kinds of practical things like moving to go to school or moving around the schools or learning about relationships within the school, and then content that the school teaches you, language, literacy, numeracy, all kinds of things. Not only they miss out on school plays and you know, and achieving and attaining and attending something. But so does the education system. That ecosystem begins to lose, which is why perhaps that emphasis on excluding, moving children away from education because of their neurodiversity at times or differences results in a system that perhaps can be understood as something like intolerant, excludes too many children, doesn't give emphasis to relationship, does not take the personal view into, it created this pain in a system that's actually becoming quite problematic. Nudge education is incredibly busy. And whilst I love when people say it's fantastic that you guys are really busy, I say no, because actually the job of nudge education is to do away with chronic disengagement. Having more to deal with means that it's going to take longer to do it. It's going to take much longer to do it. And that means the problem is getting worse, which is why I love this opportunity to come and share with you about this potential thing that is joining together to create something much greater. So some of the key takeaways for Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory is that actually the interaction of a teacher with the wider circles of society and family and everything else is incredibly fundamental for the development of a child, because you make some of those links in the cognition of a child and in relation to the child's understanding of their own identity, and will help them integrate and contribute to the greater circles, such like industry and government and so on. And again, you know, if we look at potentially through these lenses, it makes a complete sense that the child that becomes disconnected to school has a very problematic relationship with things like the police, the government, the banks and everything else. And it becomes an incredibly difficult life that often leads to lots and lots of trauma. That then often leads to lots and lots of unhelpful attachments to things like drug use and so on, or crime. So my point here is that when a child is disconnected from a nudge education's point of view, it probably needs what I call, or potentially what I called, repair agents. Can we move on to that slide, please? Thank you, Lida. And that's you guys, that's us. Because as tutors, yes, we can come alongside and do kinesthetic things, all that kind of stuff is brilliant. But let me tell you, it's been happening for years, absolutely years. For children who've become chronically disengaged, we need somebody that can come alongside them and permeate all kinds of different circles, microsystem, macro systems, and point it to everybody to two things. Number one, to the child and the horizon, and say, look, that is totally worth going for. And then number two, to those big systems and say, look, that is totally loving or being in love with that child. And I know it's not very usual, it's a very common thing to talk about the love, you know, in education. But again, for those of us that knows a tiny bit about chemistry, there is one thing that bonds us together, the bonding. If you go to the dentist, they put a bonding agent in your teeth, right, to glue it all together. In human, what we call behavioral science, it's called oxytocin. It's love. It's affection. It's relatedness. There's nothing special about nudge education. Number one, I cannot begin the, the fire in your heart that you have for this, because this is something that we've inherited through evolution. And number two, there's nothing special about what we do. We tutor, but we tutor everywhere and everyone, and with everyone who's got that kind of mentality that we have. Single-minded people joining a movement of like-minded professional, remember, like the particles, like the atoms, like the cells, to form something greater, something better, a movement that are leaving no child behind. So let oxytocin be that glue that for those of us who are working with chronically disengaged children, bond that all together. The painful, the sore, the hard-working teachers and institutions who had to let go of that child, but is still suffering because that child belongs there. not there with you, by the way, tutors. Developmentally, they need to be having those arguments with children in the playground or negotiating between two of their friends. They need to be there. So we need to repair and repair across the system, the micro, the meso, the macro system, all of it. And I think my argument is that love is a way to do it. So can we go next? So here's another one to do it for you, right? The other thing that nudge education does, very simply, and I'd argue, there's probably something that all tutors should really be considering. So what nudge education does is we are in this really fast-paced world. Refer us, do this, do that. People are struggling. Oh, risk of this. It's so much noise. What nudge education tends to do is this. Slow it down a bit. So when I was hit by a car, I was very keen to leave hospital within 3 days, Brian will remember, because I had a gig to go to of my favorite artist. I didn't realize that I had like 38 bones broken in my thorax region and lungs were punctured. I had no idea I was full of drugs as well and so on. So, but what they did for me there is, your life is very, very precious. So we're going to slow it down here for you so that you can heal. But where do we often go with this? In teaching, in education, in life, we go here, we go to this fast and task thing. It's all about what we need to do, how much we need to earn, how many and we keep on this and keep on this, and we keep kind of almost like treading on water in a way. And we get sometimes, at best, we get a little bit further, but at worst we get nowhere because we have not slowed down and focused on people. So here's another one for you. The work of nudge education, if I can offer anything to you, has been of such value to local authorities because we hold them, we hold that space with them where we say, yes, this happened, yes, that, but let's just hold that child for a minute. That child has watched mum overdose at the age of 4, then navigated so many institutions across the country. Instability has been such a prevalence in life of that child. Can we slow down for 22 weeks? Can we slow down for a term and a half? Can we slow down for a whole academic year? And can we deploy Jack? Can we deploy Claire to just come alongside them and point towards that thing which is a life worth living? And then therefore not leave them. Find that heart, find the thing. And it isn't pretty though, because when you're at A&E, it's not like a GP, is it? It's blood coming at you and you're like, oh, there's a vein, oh, there's something else. But you're there fixing, you're taking your time, you're deploying all of your expertise to do it. But most importantly, acknowledging, going back to it again, that we're all the same. So that child matters, really, really matters, because it's you in there. You know, we need some of that compassion across society, that we're all in this together. That the greater whole is far more important than the individual you. And we're learning this with the environment and all sorts of other things. We're all understanding that, the young people are rising up to it too. It's about time that us, millennials or post-millennials, whatever it is, begin to learn that it really isn't about, earning your age. There's more. And the great thing is that if I was going to come up with that, I'm dyslexic, I'm an immigrant, English is not my first language. That's why I say to people, this really isn't me. This is happening already and people are joining in with. I'm just trying to organize and lead it. But I've been invited into it as much as you have. Through that, what I believe, the succession of that universe. So how do you get a child, next slide please. How do you get a child to feel like that? Because when you're working with a chronically disengaged child, the biggest risk isn't them punching you or doing all the sort of things that we imagine because of our trauma from pupil refer units and so on. The best way we can do this is by giving them a scarf. Most people are thinking, what on earth are you talking about, Diego? But let me offer you something that I've really embedded into the culture of nudge education as well, both the people that I lead directly and those who are leading children into a life worth living. Next slide, please. This wasn't developed by me, by the way. This wasn't developed by me at all. But this scarf model was developed by this guy called David Rock. If you can Google it, I was going to put a picture of him up, because sometimes we don't believe that these people exist, but they're actually people just like you and me, you know, trying their best. And if there's hope for them, there's definitely hope for you and for me. That's what I've believed. And it stands for 5 key domains that influence behavior on social situations. So this is a little bit of a trick that Diego has played from day one, from being the first education expert. And how do I get on with all of these kids? How do I get the results that I get? And this has been absolutely central to developing meaningful relationships. And by the way, for those of you who thinks it's just a one-way thing, when you give status to somebody, you feel like that status is being given back to you. So the basis of that is that all of these things will enable your child to either move towards that life worth living or away from that life worth living. Because our brain can do 2 things when it's introduced to something new. And for a child like we work with, a life worth living is something brand new. I know I'm running out of time. I need to kind of speed up. But this is one of the last slides. So the lack of status of a child that is chronically disengaged is probably at a 10 out of 10. The lack of certainty when you're in the care system sometimes is at a 10 out of 10 in some cases, isn't it? The lack of control you have over your life events, when you kind of absolutely taken over by these complex hormones that actually are completely new, and my brain structure is not even almost prepared to deal with it, like stress, adrenaline. It's hard. It's hard for an adult, let alone for a for a 7-8-year-old who's not known relatedness. When people with badges come to see you every day in a place that is called your home, and when meetings are taking place and the police is showing up, there's no sense of you feeling safe with anyone there, is there? Do you then wonder why we are at this particular peak crisis of substance misuse? But all you need to do to understand this on the other side is look how it works on the other side, when it works well. Why is it fair that a child has not been to school, gets a tutor, and the tutor says, if you do this work, then we go in the metro for you to then go to the airport and watch some planes? I say, screw that. Take him to the metro every day and take him to see the planes every day, because he needs to feel good about life. So the dangling carrot, feed them the carrot. And then if he wants another carrot, feed them another carrot. And feed them another carrot, because that's going to give them a sense of safety, security, and so on. On the other hand, work with a child that you look in their eyes. And by the way, our brain is designed to understand the movements of our pupils in terms of excitement and so on. A baby can understand and can be actually traumatized by the fact that mom cannot potentially demonstrate how much she loves him by looking into their eyes, the avoidance, or dad. So status, our relative importance to others, build your students up. They matter more than anything at that particular hour. Practically, put your phone away. Put the effort into your sessions. Let them win. Or give them some good wins. Certainty. Practically, establish a routine. Create some rituals. Eat with your students. Let them understand what they're expected to do. But you don't do that by writing a timetable and saying, sign here now, because that's fast and task, isn't it? Slow it down, allow time, allow that flow to happen. Autonomy. The kids that we work with have had that taken out of their hands 100% at times, including the choice of who they work with. They just get told that they're going to work with nudge and we have to work our magic and deliver, but they don't even have a choice there. Now, a child in a different position can choose what subject they pick, what they do, potentially even what school they might want to go to, depending on their level of privilege, and so on. So why wouldn't do that to those human beings? Relatedness is a big one at Nudge Education. People are encouraged to become professionally close to each other, to enable that oxytocin to bond us, to bind us together, and to allow people to genuinely grow in affection for each other, respectful and professional affection. Have you ever been to hospital? I mean, I love the nurses that looked after me, and God bless them. I had no idea what they are, but they made a massive impact on me. The jokes, the laughs, the conversations, they did a really good job in getting me up to scratch. And then fairness. Let them go and see the metro. Let them go and, like I used to wonder when I began to, why are people so adamant that I don't take that child to the cinema? Kids watch filming classes, especially as teachers, let's be honest. When I forgot to do that lesson, we go to YouTube, don't we? Watch this. But the rest that comes from doing that as well, the dark room, the silent, the one voice, there's nobody. So for example, the fairness is really, really important in that process as well. So when you think about creating good rapport with your student and influencing them in the work that you do towards a life that is worth living, in order that they're not left behind, and we continue that great work that we've all started together, remember SCARF, status, our relative importance to each other, certainty, our ability to predict the future, autonomy, our control over the events that are happening in our lives, relatedness, how safe we feel with others, and fairness, which is about the perceived, how fair we perceive the exchanges between people to be. You are not in charge when you're working in the mindset of Nudge Education. Yes, of course you are from a professional point of view, but you are together. So I often tell people, when you look at a classroom, you see this from whichever angle you go to. If you're looking at me, it's a teacher and students, you know how many. When you look at counseling, therapies, that's what you get. There's always somebody in front of everybody else. But the beauty of Nudge Education is that when you see a Nudge Education intervention happening, it's happening like that. Wherever you look, there's people side by side moving towards a particular direction. And that's what I love about it. So finally, can we move to the next slide? Can we please go back to atoms and cells and all of that togetherness? It's my plea to you. As we move on towards these 5 great days of content, remember, this isn't about the techniques. This isn't about the status that you might get from being a qualified teacher, or, you know, this isn't just about your economic well-being. This is about, first of all of us. So number 1, may you find in this thing, as simple and as it may be, a community of like-minded people, tutors, professionals, that are working towards that very same thing. Which for me, Julia, forgive me if this isn't the case, is the valuing of that humanity in all of us. Next slide. So let's go back to atoms again and get behind a cause. Let's create something amazing, be it saving whales and penguins, or working to leave no child behind within our sector here in this country and abroad. Commit to a cause. Find something that'll get you out of bed beyond delivering that science lesson for an hour in an evening. Find something that is greater than the individual you that you can join in and contribute to. It will change your life, everybody. It will give you a heck of a lot of peace of mind. And you make lots and lots of good friends along the way and can tell lots and lots of good stories. Next slide, please. As we move on, let's go back to atoms and cells and togetherness, and all together live compassionately. We all hurt. If I could tell you, if I could have some more time to tell you, we all hurt. We're all somehow trying to figure it out. So let's be kind to one another. Let's be kind to our students. And all of us together, let us live a life worth living. Thank you so much for listening. And I'm really glad that I've been able to share this with you. I'll leave that for questions and so on. James, I hope that made some sense moving forward now. So there you go.
Can we say an enormous thank you to Diego? That's left us all feeling empowered and supported, and hopefully with a smile on our faces. If you would like to show others what you've learned today, then please take a little screenshot here, take a little photo of your desk, whatever it is, share it in the community, share it on social media, continue to spread the word that Diego has said to us today. It's each of our duties to ensure that students feel as supported as those that work with Nudge Education. We are about to move into the Tutors Marketplace, the first of this festival. And you are very welcome to stay. We will be setting up the stall holders right as we speak.